8 million people, one organization in crisis, and leaders who know the walls are closing in. Right now, as you watch this video, the Watchtower is hemorrhaging members at an unprecedented rate. We're not talking about a handful of doubters. Over 100,000 walked away in 2024 alone, and the pace is only accelerating. But here's what the leadership desperately hopes you'll never discover. This mass exodus isn't random. The cracks are spreading, questions are multiplying, and instead of offering real answers, the Watchtower is deploying sophisticated psychological control tactics to keep the remaining millions in line. Today, Dr. K exposes exactly how they're doing it, using what he calls the authoritarian eisegetical framework. This systematic approach reveals the manipulation hiding in plain sight within their own publications.
It was supposed to be Jesus' temptation by Satan, but one line in this talk gave away the game, and nobody in the audience noticed. This is Tell Me Dr. K, where we put dangerous doctrine under a microscope and confront religious manipulation with clarity, courage, and precision. If you are ready for deep dives that cut through deception and confront religious manipulation, subscribe and hit the notice bell. Today we are going to dissect another 2025 JW Pure Worship Convention talk entitled Imitate Jesus' Response to the Tempter, Worship Jehovah Alone. I'm Dr. K, a theologian, international consultant, author, and business scholar. I study how texts and leaders who use them shape belief and behavior for good or for harm. So we are going to dissect this 2025 Pure Worship talk using the authoritarian eisegetical framework, a framework that I've developed to analyze high control groups like the Jehovah's Witness. We'll look at 6 recurring tactics used to bend scripture into an instrument of chaotic control. As you can see on the screen there, that's the framework with 6 components. And we begin with the hierarchical interpretive control. What does hierarchical interpretive control mean? It means leadership position itself becomes the sole authority to explain scripture and suppressing independent interpretation. This is the bedrock of manipulation. If you control the meaning of the text, you control the mind of the listener. Because this is a leaked video, the name of the one who presented this talk was not included in the video. Basically, this talk was about presenting how Jesus overcame the temptation by Satan in the wilderness. So let's jump to 4 minutes and 19 seconds. The speaker says,
well, what did Jesus' response indicate? It showed that he had undivided loyalty to Jehovah. Jesus was not going to allow himself to be tempted by human authority, glory, or by the kingdoms. He refused to give even one act of worship to Satan. And he was certainly not going to serve 2 masters, even for a moment. No, Jesus was determined to give Jehovah exclusive devotion. Well, in addition to giving a powerful reply, Jesus also gave Satan a reminder. In what sense? Well, interestingly, when Jesus quoted the words of Deuteronomy 6, it forced Satan to hear the words, "It is Jehovah your God you must worship." Those words would have reminded that rebel angel that at one time he too used to worship Jehovah. So in effect, Jesus was telling Satan, you remember Jehovah. He used to be your God. Well, Jehovah is still my God. He is the only true God and the only one worthy of worship. This was a powerful reminder to worship only Jehovah.
That sounds very fine, not so? And also it sounds very spiritual. But in the Watchtower's teaching, human authority sadly includes any source outside the governing body. So when they interpret exclusive worship as exclusive loyalty to us, the leadership cements itself as the safe guide. So it's important to understand that the Jehovah's Witnesses language needs to be understood in its context. It doesn't necessarily mean what you think. The point here is that just as Jesus was loyal to Jehovah, Jesus did not give in to the temptation by Satan. Members should not give in to any pressure coming from outside, any pressure, any teaching, any direction that is not through the governing body is considered of Satan. And remember, in this verse they're saying that Jesus' response to the devil indicates that he did not have undivided loyalty to Jehovah. In other words, whatever the governing body tells the members, they are supposed to obey. Because not obeying means that you have divided attention to Jehovah. But when we look at the context of Luke 4 verse 8 and Matthew 4 verse 10, when Jesus responded to Satan that you worship God alone, it does not mean treating one religious group as a sole channel of communication by God. Is this discussion making sense? If it is, kindly do me a favor. Like, subscribe, and smash the notice bell so that when I upload part 2 of this video, you'll receive a notification. But controlling interpretation cannot keep people from living. The next step is to insert teachings that are not even in the text. We move to tactic number 2, doctrinal imposition or systematic exegesis. Now, in the previous analysis of Remain in Jehovah's Temple presented by Jeffrey Jackson, I explained what exegesis is. It comes from a Greek word which is the opposite of exegesis. Exegesis means you are drawing meaning from the text. So in other words, you are considering literally context, meaning the surrounding verses of the verse that you are reading, the verses before and the verses after, to be able to understand the context. Exegesis, where the word exegetical is coming from, remember my framework is called authoritarian exegetical framework. So exegesis means you are ignoring the context and put meaning in the text which the author did not intend to communicate to the audience that the text was intended for. So doctrinal imposition means that you are reading your own doctrines into the Bible, even if they are absent. So, for example, we go to 6 minutes and 44 seconds, and the speaker says,
But what about today? How does Satan tempt us today? Well, Satan may try to offer us tempting opportunities to enjoy material things. Again, Satan takes a truth and twists it into a lie. The truth is that Jehovah has promised all of us an abundance of material things in the new system. But for us to receive those blessings, we need to do Jehovah's will, we need to endure the hardships of the last days, and yes, we need to wait. We have to wait for Jehovah's appointed time to experience the complete fulfillment of these promises. So Satan tries to twist this truth by saying, in the new system, you'll have everything you want materially. But why wait? Just take a shortcut. Skip the self-sacrifice. You could have your own little paradise right now. Well, as he did with Jesus, Satan may tempt us with the desire of the eyes. He may show us material things. It could be in the forms of advertisements showing us material products, advertising travel, whatever the case, things that claim to make us happy. Or Satan may appeal to our pride, offering us a measure of authority or power or glory when it comes to the system of things. It could be a lucrative career, something that helps us to sustain a lavish lifestyle, again, chasing after the desire of the eyes.
Now, this would be the devil tempting you. This would be the world tempting you and telling you, in the new system, you have everything you need. There is no shortcut or self-sacrifice in Luke chapter 4, verse 5 to 7. In the Watchtower Code, shortcut equals pursuing secular success, self-sacrifice equals full-time ministry. By inserting these ideas in Satan's temptation, the talk warns against choices that threatens organization control, not just spiritual integrity. The context in the Bible about the temptation of Jesus to worshiping Satan was about political dominion in exchange for Satan's worship. So it's not talking about foregoing career success, going to the university. So the meaning that you can have a little paradise right now is actually imposed on Scripture. What was being discussed here is not scriptural. The Bible is not against material success if it comes as God's blessings and if you've acquired it in a normal way. Morally, ethically, there is nothing wrong even in having abundance of success, because the Bible has had many men and women of God who were extremely wealthy and they still served God faithfully. Men who were very, very educated, like Paul was highly educated. In today's language, he would be a PhD holder. By inserting these ideas in Satan's temptations, the talk warns against choices that threaten organization control, not just spiritual integrity. The right context here is that in the Bible, the temptation is about political domination in exchange for worshiping Satan, not an allegory about careers or education. Once the doctrines are in, you have to make it look like the Bible is actually saying them, even if it means slicing up the text. That takes us to couch tactic control number 3, textual fragmentation or proof texting. This is using isolated verses or fragments of the verse to determine the pre-decided conclusion, ignoring the context. That's why at 3 minutes and 23 seconds, the speaker says,
Satan offered Jesus all the kingdoms of the inhabited earth and their authority, but with one major string attached. What was it? Well, we read it together in verse 7. He said, "If you therefore do an act of worship before me." Interestingly, Satan was not asking Jesus to give him constant or even continuous worship, rather just a momentary act of worship. In this way, Satan was trying to influence Jesus to stop worshiping only Jehovah. Did it work? What was Jesus' response? Well, to find out, let's turn to the parallel account in the book of Matthew. This is Matthew chapter 4, and we'll read together Matthew 4 and verse 10. Now, interestingly, or significantly, this is the theme scripture for today's convention program. It's Matthew 4 and verse 10. Notice Jesus' response to the tempter. He said, "Then Jesus said to him, 'Go away, Satan, for it is written, it is Jehovah your God you must worship, and it is to him alone you must render sacred service.'" As we saw portrayed in the drama this morning, Jesus did not give in to the temptation. He didn't ignore it or run away from it. No, Jesus responded resolutely, firmly from the heart.
The context here in Matthew 4 verse 10, Jesus is rebuking Satan, quoting Deuteronomy 6 verse 13. It's a call to reject idolatry. The talk leaves it out and applies it to rejecting material opportunities. A shift from warning against idol worship to warning against choices that the governing body disapproves. I hope you are seeing how the manipulation takes place here. The speaker leaves the text out of context, which is called proof texting, which is a call against idolatry, but the talk leaves it out and applies it to rejecting material opportunities. So here is what they've done. There are certain things that the governing body has decided, the Watchtower leadership has decided over the years that members should remain poor, they should only have basic survival. And because there's a lot of pressure for people to survive, to take care of their families, every time they have to reinforce that. They have to warn against materialism. And what they call materialism is not even materialism, it's actually basic survival. Is actually somebody having resources and money to live a comfortable life, no excesses, but just normal life of an average person. For them, that is considered as materialism, as temptation by the devil. Why? Because it's easy to control people who are materially deprived. That's why higher education is a problem. A good full-time job is a problem because when you're educated, you become independent. Not only independent in thinking, but also you're independent materially because you can earn an income. And when you get educated also, there's a challenge because you can get a high-paying job. And a high-paying job demands a lot from you. You will have no time for the sacred service of Jehovah. But even proof texting cannot keep people from living unless you convince them only your group has the truth. We go to tactic number 4, exclusive truth claims. I continue the discussion to part 2, where we are going to discuss the remaining 3 tactics in the authoritarian exegetical framework. Have you noticed how sophisticated the Jehovah's Witnesses is in controlling its members and make sure that they stay under their control? If you have, kindly do me a favor. Kindly share and subscribe. To watch the first episode, which is in 2 parts, part 1 and part 2, click on this link. If you did not watch part 1 of this video, click on this link.